Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
Welcome to part 2 of the episode, Can You Catch Alzheimer's Disease? In part 1 of the episode, we discussed reports such as the recent report in Nature, the journal Nature, that there is evidence that specific and varied infectious organisms, certain viruses and certain bacteria, can trigger the effects of Alzheimer's disease. I also discussed the other theory that it's plaque, beta amyloid plaque. The truth of the matter is they're weaving together both of these ideas, that the infectious organisms are triggering the formation of plaque, and that's triggering the Alzheimer's disease. So now we come to genes. I did discuss the susceptibility gene in part 1 of this episode. The name of the episode is Can You Catch Alzheimer's? And by the way, hi, my name's Jerry Hickey. I'm a nutritional pharmacist, and I'm the senior scientific officer over here at Invite Health. So in this report, it's in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. It's from Indiana University School of Medicine. They worked with the St. Vincent Medical Group over in Indianapolis. And they're looking at the susceptibility gene, the ApoE4 gene. If both of your parents donate the ApoE4 gene to you, that could be a problem, because that gene's involved with plaque in the heart, cholesterol plaque, but it's also involved with Alzheimer's disease. That doesn't mean it's written in stone. You could do things to help protect yourself. But if you have that gene, there's a higher likelihood that you can develop Alzheimer's disease. So here they're looking at, do pathogens interact with the susceptibility gene to cause sporadic cases of Alzheimer's disease? So they're not saying all Alzheimer's diseases come from this, which more than likely. But they're saying that between the gene and the pathogens, the infections, that there's increasing inflammation in the brain. They both cause inflammation in the brain. So they're saying especially the herpes simplex type 1 gene, that's the herpes you get on your lip, cytomegalovirus, and chlamydia pneumonia, spirochetes, they cause Lyme's disease, Helicobacter pylori, that causes ulcers in the digestive tract, and various bacteria that you get in gum disease. Now, there's a lot of evidence for all of these. There's evidence for H. pylori infections in the stomach leading to inflammation in the brain. There's evidence for gum disease bacteria getting into the brain. They actually enter the brain through the part of your brain that senses odors. In fact, one of the first symptoms of Alzheimer's disease is a loss of your sense of smell. So there's evidence that the bacteria are somehow getting into this nerve, whether it's the virus you get on your lip, the herpes 1 simplex virus, or the bacteria that you get in your gums, with severe gum disease we're talking about here, not mild gum disease. Somehow they're getting into the nerve that goes into your brain that's involved with your sense of smell, and that gets into a part of the brain called the entorhinal cortex. They're connected, and that's kind of like one of your GPS inside your brain. But that seems to be where Alzheimer's damage really starts and takes off from and spreads out from. And it's not that far from other parts of the brain that are really important for memory and cognitive functions. Your entorhinal cortex is connected closely to your dentate gyrus and your hippocampus. So it's plausible. It really is plausible. So they said, here's their report. These pathogens are able to evade destruction by our immune system, I'm paraphrasing, leading to long-standing infections. And bacterial and viral DNA and RNA and bacterial proteins increase the expression of pro-inflammatory molecules by the immune system that inflame us and activate all our parts of our immune system. So they're saying that these bacteria and viruses lead to Alzheimer's disease damage, like a buildup of plaque in the brain. We call it beta amyloid plaque. Tau proteins, damage tau proteins. That's called a tauopathy. That's the damage that occurs to your thinking parts of the brain. Brain injury, and the death of brain cells. So they're using highly technical words. I'm just translating as I go. So they're saying chronic brain infection with HSV1, that's the herpes virus, chlamydia pneumonia, spirochetes like Lyme's disease, cause complex processes. They cause a vicious cycle of uncontrolled inflammation in the brain and the nervous system and damage to brain tissue. So they said infections such as cytomegalovirus, Helicobacter pylori, and periodontal pathogens, that's gum disease bacteria, induce production of systemic pro-inflammatory cytokines that may cross the blood-brain barrier to promote neurodegeneration. So they're saying that these bacteria trigger the immune system to create these powerful inflammatory chemicals like interleukin-6 that can then cross into your brain and damage your brain. Now they're talking about the susceptibility gene to heart disease and Alzheimer's called the ApoE4 gene. It enhances brain infiltration by pathogens including herpes virus and chlamydia pneumonia. And it's involved with increased inflammation by the immune system. So the ApoE4 gene, if you get it from both parents, increases your risk of heart disease and brain disease. It makes it easier for viruses to get into your brain, and it increases the amount of inflammation and damage that they can cause, which is all, to me, very scary. But you can do something about it. So here's the University of Oxford. Now, they're one of the best academic institutions in the world. It's in FASB Journal. That was the first medical journal. The FASB Journal is an American Society of Chemistry journal. That was the first medical journal. It's a very prestigious journal. You may not have heard of it because, usually people in the medical industry would know it, or the pharmaceutical industry. So here's what they said. Now, this is Oxford University. Oxford University is up there with Harvard and Yale. Support for the concept that herpes simplex virus type 1, when present in the brains of apolipoprotein E4 carriers, is a major risk for Alzheimer's disease, is increasing, with over 120 publications providing direct or indirect evidence relevant to this hypothesis. Now, this is by the year 2017. There's already 120 reports that if you have the susceptibility gene for Alzheimer's disease and you have the herpes virus, it increases your risk of having Alzheimer's disease. They examined now we're back to what Oxford says, Oxford University. They examined the relationship between total infectious burden, so that means how high is the viral titer, etc., how many infections do you have, and cognitive function and Alzheimer's disease. This indicates the involvement of herpes type 1 and cytomegalovirus. Well, we don't like to hear that, but that's the way it is. Infections. Now, these are long-standing infections. They avoid your immune system. They get under control by the immune system, but they hide in the body in different places. And when your immune system gets knocked down, which happens as you grow older, they become dangerous. They can get reactivated. We all go through a condition called immunosenescence, where our immune system weakens with age. And that's when that's why people, when they're older, the flu becomes more dangerous, the coronavirus COVID-19 infection becomes more dangerous. That's when people are more at risk of getting bacterial pneumonia that may become dangerous, and of course shingles, which is the chickenpox virus. That's a herpes simplex virus also. So I have a slew of these reports, and they're all basically the same thing. They're all looking at the herpes virus and cytomegalovirus and herpes type 2. The herpes type 2 virus is the type of virus you get lower down in your plumbing, your sexual plumbing. They're all looking at the etiology of this. But there's another viewpoint to this, your gut. This is the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston, the Consortium on Aging, and the Laboratory of Virology, Department of Immunology and Infectious Disease, the Hertzfield Institute of Immunology and Experimental Therapy over in Europe. Oh my goodness, what a mouthful. It's in the journal Molecular Neurobiology, and let me tell you what they're talking about. They're talking about if you have bad bacteria in the gut. There's always some bad bacteria in your intestines, but there should be enough good bacteria to protect you from them, to keep them under control. So let's explain what I mean by bad bacteria. There are bacteria in the gut that if they get a chance, they will inflame the lining of your gut. So when there's not enough good bacteria and the bad bacteria take over, that can cause inflammation. That's called dysbiosis, an imbalance of gut bacteria. So you have too many pro-inflammatory bacteria that lead into inflammation. They inflame the thin lining of your intestines. There's a thin line of cells, a thin layer of cells called epithelial cells that line your intestines. If they inflame those, you develop leaky gut syndrome, which means toxins from the intestines can now leach into the bloodstream. And they're finding that leaky gut stream and dysbiosis are causative. They're found in people with rheumatoid arthritis. They seem to be connected with lupus. They seem to be connected with certain cancers like pancreatic cancer. So it's not unheard of that these things are related to different diseases. So here they're looking at gut bacteria versus other people that are looking at viruses and gum disease as being causative of Alzheimer's disease. But I tell you, there's been a lot of research recently about the gut-brain axis. And I've done a podcast on that recently, actually, where the bacteria in your intestines, if they're good ones, they control the immune system and you have a happy brain. But if they're bad ones that lead to inflammation, the inflammation leaches into your brain and your brain has problems like you could have anxiety, depression. You could feel the symptoms of stress worse, and even they're finding connections between bad bacteria in the gut in a number of studies and the onset of Parkinson's disease as well as the onset of Alzheimer's disease. And that's exactly what they're talking about here. The bad bacteria create something called lipopolysaccharides, and this inflames the lining of the gut, and that inflammation can get into your brain, and that's what's triggering Alzheimer's disease. And there's quite a few studies showing this right now. In fact, a report just came out November 13th, a week ago, linking bacteria in the gut to Alzheimer's disease. It's from the University Hospitals of Geneva in Switzerland, and a team from the University of Geneva, and researchers in Italy. It's published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. It's the most recent report on bacteria and Alzheimer's disease. And it's talking when you have bad bacteria in the gut, they create these lipopolysaccharides and certain short-chain fatty acids like acetate and valerate, and they see this in people with Alzheimer's disease. Now, on the other hand, when you have good bacteria in the gut, that make butyrate. This is really important. It's a short-chain fatty acid. That's associated with not having Alzheimer's disease, not having plaque buildup in your brain. So the bad bacteria create lipopolysaccharides that leach into your blood vessels and inflame your brain. They also create short-chain fatty acids that are inflammatory called acetate and valerate. And they see more plaque in the brains of these people, Alzheimer's-related plaque. And conversely, when you have more good bacteria, they create butyrate, and people with higher levels of butyrate in their bloodstream and in their intestines have a lot less plaque in the brain. So let's discuss that because other studies are pointing at that also. Certain strains of good bacteria create lactate, pyruvate, and butyrate. Now they do this when you eat healthy food, like beans or walnuts or avocados, or an apple or broccoli, healthy food. They work on the fibers and they release these three short-chain fatty acids. Now, pyruvate's important. That's made by the upper intestine. When enough pyruvate is signaled by the brain said you eat enough food, the brain says you've eaten enough food, and it turns off your appetite. So having good bacteria and eating good food interact to control your appetite and help you stay lean and help prevent you from gaining weight. And another part of the intestines, you create lactate. And lactate's very interesting because lactate kills fungi, lactate kills bad bacteria, but lactate also gives energy to the upper parts of the intestines to digest your food and move it downwards towards your bowels. And in your bowels, the good bacteria interact with the same fibers and they create butyrate, which is also called butyric acid. They actually give butyric acid enemas to people with colitis. It heals the colitis. But the best way is good food and good bacteria. You're making butyrate all the time. Why? Because butyrate only lasts for several seconds. But if you eat good food at 3 times a day with each meal and you have good bacteria present in your colon, you're making butyrate all day long. So what are the benefits of butyrate? Besides the brain benefit, which we'll get to in a second, that may help prevent Alzheimer's disease. Butyrate gives the intestines energy to digest your food. Butyrate gives the intestines the energy to absorb your minerals, like the calcium for your bones, and potassium for your blood pressure, and magnesium for energy. Butyrate allows the intestines to heal, but butyrate does something else too. Some of that butyrate escapes into your bloodstream and gets into your brain. Your brain loves butyrate. All blood vessels throughout your body have insulation, mostly made out of collagen, but other molecules too, like keratins, etc. And this layer helps keep things that are in the blood from escaping into the body unless the body needs it. Now, in the brain, there's extra insulation, because things that could get into the body, that's not as dangerous as if those same things escape into your brain. For instance, you can have a bacterial infection in your big toe, so what? You treat it. You wash it with soap and water, you put some hydrogen peroxide on it, you put bacitracin ointment on it, and you cover it with a Band-Aid, and you do that twice a day, morning and evening, and it goes away. But if you got that same bacteria in your brain, you're dead. So to prevent things from getting into the brain that don't belong in there, the blood vessels in the brain have extra insulation, because the blood circulates throughout the whole body, so the same blood that's going through your legs is going through your brain. So it's called the blood-brain barrier. It's extra insulation. It keeps things in the blood from escaping into the brain. As we grow older, the blood-brain barrier tends to get leaky. And now that becomes dangerous if it's excessive. Butyrate heals the blood-brain barrier. That means it's keeping bad things out of the brain. So that's why they're finding there's less plaque in the brains of people with butyrate. And they're also finding that people with elevated levels of butyrate also have more youthful, more elastic, resilient, stronger, tougher blood-brain barriers. And of course, the butyrate comes from an interaction between good food with a lot of fiber and good bacteria in your colon. So that's a very important finding. So now what can you do? Well, first of all, I have to tell you, there was a very interesting study. There's a lot of studies that green tea is great for your brain. A lot of studies. But they found that people who habitually drink high-quality green tea and add like lemon to it, not adding milk to it, that even if they have the ApoE4 gene, the susceptibility gene for Alzheimer's disease and heart disease, they're less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease or plaque in their brain or develop heart disease. The green tea seems to offset the bad gene. I mean, along with a lot of other things like don't abuse alcohol, don't eat a lot of red meat, don't smoke, get your exercise, get your sleep, eat your vegetables, eat a good Mediterranean type diet. If you want a nice diet, but I don't think it's complete, the Mind diet. And the Mind diet, it was I'm doing this from memory. The Rusk Institute over in Chicago investigates aging, health and aging, and they did a study, and they found that people who adhered to certain foods had a much lower risk of losing memory, of developing mild cognitive impairment, and even Alzheimer's disease. And they put that together. They took the best of the DASH diet. The DASH diet was created to lower your risk of heart disease, and the best of the Mediterranean diet, and they put it together called the Mind diet. If you can't find an example of the Mind diet, it doesn't tell you how much to eat, it tells you what to eat and also what to avoid. But I took it several steps further, because they didn't include cocoa, they didn't include green tea, and as far as I'm concerned, they included too many servings of things that I think are not as desirable. Send me an email, and I'll send you my copy of the Mind diet and what I think you should add to it. My email is jhickey@infighthealth.com. jhickey@infighthealth.com. So one thing you could do is take care of your good bacteria in your digestive tract. Now there's 3 ways of doing that. And I tell people to do all 3, especially when they're older or if they have diabetes or some kind of chronic disease. 1, eat a good diet. Eat like a Mediterranean diet. Lots of fresh vegetables and fresh fruits and seeds and nuts and salads and some fish. They don't really eat red meat. They do eat some poultry. Eat a good diet. So that feeds all your bacteria. And then eat some fermented foods. Consume some fermented foods like real yogurt. I'm not talking about those yogurts that are really smooth and they taste like candy. I'm talking about the real lumpy old yogurt. Get the plain yogurt. You can add some high quality jam to it. That's all you need to do, or some blueberries. And do that, you get some bacteria. Or kefir. which is a fermented milk product. There's a lot of fermented foods from parts of Eastern Europe. There's a lot of fermented foods from Asia, like from South Korea and Japan. So eat some of those. That's like a second wave because you're actually putting bacteria in your intestines. And then take a good probiotic. And try to include really good species like Lactobacillus casei, Lactobacillus plantarum, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, Bifidobacterium bifidum, Bifidobacterium animalis subspecies lactis. Try to get some of those in there. Those are really top-notch. And Lactobacillus acidophilus. Those are really top-notch probiotic bacteria. They have a lot of benefits, and they're really good, and they help reduce inflammation. They help control your immune system. They're very good to have, especially in the winter, let me tell you. The second thing, and by the way, those strains of bacteria feed many other healthy strains of bacteria. There's a certain amount of criticism from people who are not in the know that if you take only certain strains of bacteria, you're removing other healthy bacteria. That's not the case. Certain strains of probiotic bacteria actually nurture along with them many other strains of healthy bacteria. So they bring them along with them. So there's a whole bunch of bacteria that are increasing in number that are good for your health. So the first thing I would say is take care of your digestive tract, take care of your good bacteria. The second thing, a well-absorbed turmeric, like biocurcumin. I love biocurcumin. I take it myself every day. I take it for my brain, by the way. Well-absorbed turmeric has a lot of ingredients in it. Not just curcumin that everybody talks about, but there's bis-methoxycurcumin and other forms of curcumin, and there's essential oils like aromatic turmeric that are all really good for your brain. And there's a number of studies now showing that when you take a well-absorbed turmeric is poorly absorbed by humans. Turmeric is poorly absorbed by humans. You know turmeric, it's that characteristic odor and color and flavor of curry. I love curry. I like it so much I'd love to put it in my coffee in the morning, but I don't. That would be weird. Now, turmeric is poorly absorbed by us humans, but there are better absorbed forms, like the curcumin C3 complex, where they add the black pepper bioperine to it for improved absorption. Or the biocurcumin is really well absorbed, and that has all of the ingredients from the turmeric plant that are great for your brain. They've shown that these things, when you take them, they improve your memory over like a 6-hour period. Even the first dosage of them. The second thing it shows is there's less fatigue when you're doing grueling brain athletics, like doing a math test or something. But they're also showing that they help with depression because they reduce inflammation in the brain. They're helping restore the entire brain to the entire terrain of the brain to health. But there's a lot of evidence that they're powerful anti-inflammatory, antioxidant products in your brain. So every day I take 2 biocurcumin 5-loxin with my breakfast. The 5-loxin is frankincense, which is also good for the brain. So that's the second thing you could do. Probiotic bacteria and a really well-absorbed turmeric. The third thing, resveratrol. I take resveratrol every day, twice a day, because the studies on the brain are unbelievable. First of all, it's the most vasoactive supplement you could take. Vasoactive means it improves blood flow. And one place that's key for the blood flow effects is your brain. Because circulation to the brain declines with age. That's one of the problems. Not only does your blood-brain barrier break down, the barrier that keeps bad things out of your brain, it becomes leaky, but also there's less circulation to the brain, so it's a double whammy for aging because your brain is receiving less oxygen, less nutrition, and cells start to die. When you take resveratrol, it's been shown to restore healthy circulation in many human clinical trials in older people, even in diabetics who have notoriously poor circulation to their brain. And it's restored circulation to their brain, and their memory improves. But they also found that it repairs your blood-brain barrier. So those are the 3 things, besides all the other good things you could do, eating the good diet, getting your exercise, getting enough sleep, drinking your water, all the good things. Not abusing alcohol, not smoking. Refurbish your good bacteria, take a well-absorbed turmeric, like biocurcumin, and get some really high-quality resveratrol like I do. That's what I would do. In fact, that is exactly what I do. I go beyond that even. I also take alcohol with ALA for brain energy and brain metabolism. Thank you for tuning in to the Invite Health Podcast. You can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or just go to my homepage, invitehealth.com, and I've got a big icon for podcasts. And we have over 200 podcasts there. Please make sure you subscribe. Please leave me a review. I'd like to know how I'm doing. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. I hope to see you another time on another episode of the Invite Health Podcast. And thank you very much for listening, and have a good day.